Welcome back. You're watching Your World at 10. Now, as we've been telling you, the Andhra Pradesh High Court has granted bail to Satyam's former chairman and CEO, Ramalinga Raju. This almost 17 months after Raju's infamous confession. And let me point out to you that in the course of his incarceration, he spent a better part of that time in hospital, claiming to be ill, having contracted hepatitis C, and has not made a single appearance in the CBI court that is prosecuting this case. And today now he's out on bail, and that means that all the accused, including his brother and the former CFO of Satyam, as well as the auditors, are all out on bail. So what does this mean in terms of taking stock of this case, whether the CBI is progressing fast enough, whether this bail granting is a setback to the CBI, and on what grounds this bail has been granted? To discuss all of that, I'm joined by well-known criminal lawyer Amit Desai, K. Surendra, the CBI Special Counsel, and also joining me, the Helka Deputy Editor Vijay Simha. Gentlemen, all three of you, thank you very much for joining me. Mr. Surendra, if I could start with you first. The buzz is that he's been granted bail on health grounds, but interestingly, I read a bunch of news reports over the course of the last few days saying that the judge on Monday, when he reserved his order, said he will not be granting bail on health grounds. Do you know exactly the reasons for which he has been granted bail, sir?
I haven't gone through the order as yet, and I don't know the reasons or the grounds on which the bail was granted.
So you don't have the reasons specifically, but could it have been on grounds of health? Because that's the basis on which the bail application was made and the case was argued.
Yeah, the grounds are the ground on parity, because the other director is also released, the second and third accused.
Right.
On grounds on parity, and also on grounds of the medical grounds, bail was argued.
Mr. Surendra, the last we spoke, you had pointed out that you had asked for the trial court judge to, in fact, allow you to get a second opinion on the medical condition of Mr. Raju. But that never really went anywhere, is it? You weren't able to get a second opinion at all. And even now, the country's premier investigation agency doesn't really know if Mr. Raju is really that unwell that he wasn't able to appear in court at all for the last many months.
No, we had filed an application seeking second opinion, and that is still pending before the court. Now, this is a new development regarding his bail.
Clearly not a development that you had not anticipated, right?
No, we were opposed to his being released on bail on the grounds that he may influence the witnesses. Most of the nearly 250 witnesses were from Satyam company.
Mr. Desai, is this due process? Am I incorrect in getting agitated and upset about the fact that this man has not appeared in court a single day, has been living in some 5-star hotel room, and I'm going to go to Vijay for more details on his health condition. But it just seems so unfair that he makes this national confession of fraud, then spends the better part of his time in a 5-star hospital room and is now out on bail.
Menka, it's not very unusual. You must understand the process and the way it works. He has been in judicial custody for probably the better part of the last 17 months, because the law provides that the police custody is only for the first 14 days.
Right.
Now, when he's in judicial custody, he's really under the supervision of the court. And therefore, if the court was satisfied that he was entitled to medical treatment and was entitled to be in hospital, then that's a decision that the court has made. Certainly, the court is entitled to monitor that condition, and if there is any evidence to show that he is unwell and therefore he is well and he doesn't deserve to be in hospital, then that's something that the court would really take up and pass appropriate directions to shift him back into the jail. So it really depends here as to what is the material that the judge has seen or the magistrate has seen to be able to satisfy himself that he deserved to be in hospital for this entire period of time.
And what about the fact that the High Court has agreed or approved his bail condition? Now, whether it is on the grounds of health, assuming it's not on the grounds of health, what are the other grounds that he would be due bail, for?
I think after spending 17 months in judicial custody, and now that the charge sheets have been filed and the matter is kept at the stage of framing of charge, it's unlikely, because the crucial stage of investigation is over, it's unlikely, the court would have felt that it's unlikely that he can now tamper with witnesses, because now the witnesses will really come into the courtroom and give their depositions. So at this point of time, he would be entitled to bail. The law on bail is fairly well settled. It's not to be treated as a preventive detention or a punitive detention period prior to the trial. So having spent 17 months in custody, 3 charge sheets having been filed, the CBI has more or less completed its investigations. The court would have probably felt that there's now a ripe time to grant him bail. I mean, you will recollect, even in Harshad Mehta's case, which was in 1991, where there was a scam of about 3,000 crores, he was granted bail in about 3 months' time.
So you're saying that process allows for him to get bail, and we cannot, however anguished we feel by the fact that he is now out of his hospital jail, if I may call it that, we cannot deny him that.
That's right.
All right. Vijay, why was he in hospital? Because y'all had proof, that supported the fact that he was not really that unwell, that he couldn't have made it to court, and yet Ramalinga Raju did not make it to court at all, and in fact provided written submissions only till a few weeks ago. Can you tell me a little bit more about the evidence that you collected about Raju's health?
See, what we were told is what the world was told, that Raju complained of chest pain, and he was admitted to the Nizam's Institute for Medical Sciences, which is one of the premier hospitals in Hyderabad. Now, this, to us, is absolutely the same path every person who is, who's either facing cases or has done something he shouldn't takes. Now, this is absurd, so we wanted to take a look. What's wrong? Every time there's a case, every time somebody is held, responsible, the person falls sick. Now, the pattern we wanted to check. So we went into the same hospital, and our investigation correspondent got himself admitted there. And we found that he had a regular schedule. He was able to take his walks, early morning walks, happily joke around, and he met 234 visitors in less than 3 months. This was not a man who was ill. This was not a man who couldn't spend a few moments in court to either plead guilty or not plead guilty, because the moment he goes to court, then the trial can be committed. The case can be committed to trial. Else, it's the same old path which everybody has taken. So our reporter got himself admitted on the same floor, and he was being treated by the same person who was attending to Mr. Raju. And we were able to see that he was no way in that condition of poor health that is being made out.
This is, the Tehelka story has now made the headlines for several months now, Mr. Desai. How unfortunate is it that the premier investigation agency in this country is not able to prove that Ramalinga Raju is in a state of health where he can appear in court? The CBI has failed to do that, and today Raju is out on bail, and he hasn't attended court a single day, and in fact last week wrote submissions to court retracting his national confession of fraud and said that all of CBI's charges are false.
Menka, here again you need to understand how the process works.
Okay.
I think the stage has now come for framing of charges, and that is the time when the accused is required to actually plead guilty. The court has to hear the arguments of both the prosecution and the defense on whether the charges are made out. It is after that that the court will frame charges, if it is so inclined, and that is the stage when an accused is required to plead. So the stage for pleading guilty has not yet arisen. All this time, the last 17 months, seems to be in a period of investigation. And the CBI has filed 3 charge sheets after conducting investigations in India and overseas. So you can't sort of criticize the process. You can't criticize the fact that he has not been in court to plead guilty because the stage has not come. On the other hand, in relation to the issue as to whether he was unwell, that's a matter which because he's in judicial custody, it's for the court to take that into consideration. So if the court had evidence to show that he was actually hale and hearty...
CBI put in a request for a second medical opinion. We've had we have had newspapers of repute or magazines of repute like Tehelka put out stories saying that he seems to be in, reasonable health. He seems to be walking around. He can at least appear in court. And yet this man has escaped appearing in court altogether.
Yes, but I think you should await the outcome of that application which is pending, because as the counsel for the CBI mentioned, that application was filed recently and is pending consideration by the magistrate. In fact, the magistrate could have directed the setting up of a medical board to determine whether there's any substance in these allegations, and if that is the case, that if it is found by the medical board it was actually all well, then he would have been taken back into jail.
But it has been several weeks now, if not months, since they've asked for a second medical opinion, and yet nothing has moved on that. So I'm sure you will forgive me for feeling enraged about the fact that this man is out on bail without appearing a single day in court.
I'm sure that the court which has now granted him bail, and I believe that's the High Court which has granted him bail,
that's right,
would put him on terms and conditions to attend the court. So, you should probably be seeing him in court if his doctors allow him to do so.
You don't think this is a setback to the investigation and to CBI's case, the fact that he has been given bail?
Not at all.
So legally, it is not a setback in any fashion.
That's right.
Mr. Surinder, are you looking at this as a setback because you claim that this will impede your investigations or your continuing investigations? If I understand the legalities of this correctly, you have filed charge sheets, but you haven't framed the charges, and therefore the trial cannot proceed till that happens. And you believe now that Ramalinga Raju is got bail, he may be able to interfere in your proceedings or investigations rather?
Investigations, yes. Argument was advanced saying that he might be a hurdle in the investigation regarding the for diversion of funds, which is being investigated right now.
You don't think this is a setback to your case, sir? Because you had, if I remember correctly, made the application for a second medical opinion several weeks ago, and you haven't heard anything from the trial court on that as yet. And so, I mean, you know, the man seems to be well, yet he's out on bail. You're saying it will impede your investigations, and we really have no timeline on when the trial will start.
The trial, the process has commenced. Now, today, the arguments on behalf of the prosecution we have completed, stating that there's a prima facie case made out and charges could be framed. Now, 4 of the accused, they have filed discharge applications, which would be heard tomorrow or the subsequent day.
So you're satisfied with the process, is it, Mr. Surinder?
No, definitely. I mean, the pace of the trial is slow. Still, we were able to make some improvement in completing the stage of arguments now, and the next stage is framing of charge against the accused.
Mr. Desai, forgive me again. I may not know the due process, but this does seem slow. We're 17 months down, from that infamous confession. I also want you to explain to me how he can retract a confession that he's made on a national platform.
He may have his explanations and justifications for withdrawing from that statement. It's ultimately going to be determined by a court trying the case and the magistrate whether to accept that retraction or not to accept it. So all that he has done is at this point of time given an explanation as to why and in what circumstance he made that statement. The court will determine whether that retraction is to be accepted or his statement should be treated as voluntary. So
you're not. I know that you're an expert of this system, and you see several delays, and maybe therefore you're immune to them. But don't you believe that this is a case that we should have moved a lot faster on than we have at present?
I think again a lot depends upon the investigations that were taking place and the charges that they wanted to frame. From what I understand, the CBA was really doing was to establish the case of diversion of funds. That is an investigation that probably took the better part of a year. Until those investigations were over and they could file those supplementary charge sheets, it would have been difficult for the court to actually start the process of framing of charges, because that seems to have been a very important part of the entire prosecution case. So it's only now that 3 charge sheets have been filed and the court feels that it is ripe to commence the process that they've started the process right now.
You're giving me lots of technical explanations. You're not telling me why I should not be enraged about the fact that all 10 accused are out on bail and that, we still don't seem to have a timeline on the trial in terms of, let's not forget the appeal process, which will run into several years, and it just seems very unfair.
You're right. It does seem unfair. It is necessary that investigations move at a faster pace. Understand that already there's a special court that has been set up in Hyderabad to take up this particular case and fast track it. So if you look at it and compare it with many of the other cases which are going on, this is certainly a case which has commenced much faster than many of the other scams in this country. So in that sense, having seen so many cases, I think this is moving at a reasonable pace. It certainly could have moved faster if the CBI had completed investigations faster. But if the investigation has taken so much time because it's being conducted overseas, and these things do happen, then the court would necessarily have to wait till a particular stage to commence the process of the trial.
Where does it go from here onwards? From the trial, it can go into almost 3 different appeal formats, right?
That's right, but you're looking at first 250 witnesses. I don't even know how many thousand documents need to be proved. That itself will probably take them, even on a day-to-day basis, about a year.
Just for the trial at this level to proceed.
That's right.
And thereafter we get into the High Court level and then the Supreme Court level.
That's right.
So how many years is it going to take before we actually do know the fate of Ramalinga Raju?
It'll certainly take a few years.
Now, few is 5, 6, 7?
Well,
based on your experience of our judicial system?
At least about 5 years.
All right, let's hope we do have a final outcome in 5 years. And to be fair to the investigating agencies in India and the judicial process of this country, let me quote from the most famous case of corporate fraud, the Enron case, that is, which also took roughly 5 to 6 years to get convictions. It went bankrupt in 2001, and CEO Jeff Skilling was sentenced to roughly 24 years of jail in the year 2006. Well, Mr. Desai, K. Surender and Vijay, thank you very much for joining us on that discussion.